Shabbat Shalom. I hope you're doing well and had an inspiring and wonderful Rosh Hashanah. We at the Scheier most certainly had an extraordinary time. We were delighted to see so many people come out, so many people come together, so many people praying and reconnecting and just celebrating the essence of our community and celebrating the blessings of being together, and can't wait to see you again on Yom Kippur. But before we get to Yom Kippur, we have a very special Shabbat, Shabbat Shuva, the Shabbat of repentance, which, if one thinks about the year beginning at Rosh Hashanah, this Shabbat is actually the first Shabbat of the year. And there's significance in that. The holy Sfat Emet, the Ger Rebbe, has an extraordinary piece on Parshat Nitzavim. And he writes that just as Shabbat is structured with the concept of Kiddush and Havdalah, you begin Shabbat on Friday night by saying Kiddush. You end Shabbat on Saturday night by saying Havdalah. There are rituals to begin and rituals to end. So too, the Shabbats of the year are also structured with a beginning and an end. And if that's true, then the beginning of the Shabbatot of the year is this coming Shabbat, the first Shabbat. That's the Kiddush of all of the Shabbatot. And the Sfat Emet further says that when the Talmud says that if only the children of Israel would observe 2 Shabbatot according to law, Kehil Chatan, if they would properly observe 2 Shabbatot, they would be immediately redeemed. And he said that's referring to these 2 Shabbatot, the first Shabbat of the year and the last Shabbat of the year. Why? Well, the last Shabbat of the year is the Shabbat of Cheshbon Nefesh, of doing an internal calculation of how the year went, of accounting for all of the good things and the bad things in terms of Shabbat as well, how we observe Shabbat, how we didn't observe Shabbat. That's the last Shabbat of the year. The first Shabbat of the year, that's the Shabbat for applying all of the decisions and all of the commitments that we made on Rosh Hashanah and applying it to the rest of the year. That's this coming Shabbat. And so according to the Sfat Emet, to the Ger Rebbe, and according to common sense, the first Shabbat of the year is a unique opportunity to set the tone for the rest of the year. And so we do that. And one of the principles of Shabbat is that Shabbat is not observed alone. That's the ritual of the 2 candles. 1 candle is not enough. We need others to celebrate Shabbat. And there was a beautiful story that was told about the Kapshiner Rebbe, Rav Avraham Yoshua Heschel, who lived in the first half of the 20th century. And he was living in Brooklyn, the Rebbe, and he had Hasidim all over. He had his followers all over, one of whom, one very wealthy follower, worked in the Diamond District of Manhattan. And one day, the Rebbe traveled to Manhattan to visit his Chassid. He walked into the office, and the assistant stood up right away. She recognized the Rebbe right away, and her boss had spoken about this Rebbe so often, and here he was in person visiting. And the Chassid walks into the room. He sees his Rebbe there. He can't believe it. What an honor! The Rebbe has come to me. He's flabbergasted. He can't process what's happening. You go to the Rebbe. The Rebbe doesn't come to you. What's happening? And so he welcomed the Rebbe and he said, please come into my office. He let the Rebbe walk in first to the office. He let the Rebbe sit down first, as giving him all of the honor. And he said, Rebbe, why have you come to me? And the Rebbe said, because I have a very important request to ask of you. He said, Rebbe, you could have summoned me. I would have come to you any time. And the Rebbe said, no, this is so important to me that I needed to ask you directly. I needed to come to you. And the Chassid said, Rebbe, you can always count on me. What do you need? He said, I need some money for tzedakah. And the Chassid said, of course, I'm always ready to give. Whatever you tell me, I'll give for tzedakah. And the Rebbe said, well, you see, there's this family, and he and the father is out of a job, and the mother is struggling, and the kids, and there are medical needs, and the expenses are going up and up, and I need to help them. And the Chassid said, Rebbe, of course I'll help them. That's what I'm here for. That's what you teach us, is that we're here to help each other. So how much do you need? What do you need? And the Rebbe told him the amount that he needed, and the Chassid said, of course, I'm ready to give the amount. I don't have the cash right here, but I'm happy to, I'll write a check. Rebbe, tell me, to whom do I write the check? And the Rebbe said, write the check to your brother, because he and his family are the ones that have been neglected. He and his family are the ones that are in need. And this story I find very powerful because too often we set our lofty objectives on personal achievements, on communal achievements, but one's own family, looking around one's own vicinity, the closeness that exists within families, within a community, that takes priority. That comes first. And what the Rebbe was telling this amazingly generous person, his follower, was you've internalized the messages and the lessons of the Torah in terms of tzedakah, but you haven't internalized them in terms of familial responsibility. And this Shabbat, this first Shabbat of the year, is the Shabbat of family, of community, because those are the values of Shabbat. Those are the essential core values that Shabbat asks us to consider. That Shabbat, which goes back to the story of creation, the Shabbat that was observed on the 7th day of creation, right after the 6th day. And it was the 6th day that we celebrated on Rosh Hashanah, the creation of humanity, the creation of man, the creation of woman, the creation of the Jewish family. And now that that's been created, here comes Shabbat. And one imagines that first Shabbat, maybe there wasn't wine for Kiddush or for Havdalah, maybe they didn't go to Shul, the first two people. However, whatever they did on that first day, on that first full day of their lives, the first Shabbat, that serves as a model for us because it's all about those inner circles, the inner core of who we are and who we look after and who we concern ourselves with, not only during this time of year, but throughout the year as well. Write the check to your own family, said the Rebbe to his chassid. And so on this first Shabbat of the year, I want to bless each and every one of us that will set the tone for not only every Shabbat of the year, but in Hebrew, the word Shabbat means the Sabbath day, and the word Shabbat can also refer to the entirety of the week, because the Sabbath day influences whatever we do for the other 6 days of the week. It's a conversation that happens between our work life and the life of sanctity and the life of Shabbat. And so for this first Shabbat of this new year, I wish each and every one of you a Shabbat Shalom and a Gemar Chatima Tova.